Hey, what's up, everybody? Good evening. Good evening. It's the pastor. It's the pastor running a little early. No music, no fanfare, just me and you together for a few minutes this evening. So, forgive me for not having any music on, but I don't think it's called for this evening, especially dealing with the subject matter that I'm going to be touching on. Let me see if I can get some folks tagged up. While I'm doing that, y'all please share this out. Please share this out. There's a message in here that some folks need to hear. Seriously. Yep, for sure. Sometimes I get like that. Sometimes I just get a little bit fed up over my head. Clear up to here. And I got to say what I got to say. And this is one of those times. Forgive me for not sticking to the routine of 8:30 p.m., moving this up till 7:30 p.m. We put out a commercial right now for Stand as One. Stand as One is looking for good people to become a part of it. Hit up Justin Crucifix Hunt. Also hit up United Front with Jason Jones and a whole bunch of others. And I just dropped that out there because I'm just rambling on right now, trying to get some folks tagged up. Definitely trying to keep from tagging up the people who don't really need to be involved in this conversation. This conversation is going to somewhat be dealing with politics, but definitely not focused specifically on politics. But it's just something that's got to be said. So let me finish getting folks tagged up right here. For sure. I don't anticipate going long on this subject at all, because it's too big of a hurt on my heart to talk about for too long, and the frustrations involved with the subject matter. Okay. All right, let me stop right there. We good to go. Okay. All right, let me hit up Chris. Okay. Christopher and Ben Poe. Okay, all right, good. Right there. Right there. Let's leave it right there. Okay, all right. Taisha, your son okay? I hope you had urgent care with him. I hope he's all right. For sure. Good evening, one and all. Hello to all that have joined. I'm going to give it a couple of more minutes for some more folks to get on. Like I said, I stepped out of the norm today in order to talk about something that's, weighing heavy on my heart. And no, the pastor's okay. I'm good, okay myself. But I don't know if y'all know enough about me. Most of y'all know enough about me that I care about other people. And that's a burden I would hope that everybody carries, but maybe some more than others. And when others hurt, I hurt. And I've accepted that position. That's part of my gifting on this journey that I'm on. And that's why I deal with those who are having difficult times in their lives, who lose loved ones, those who deal with gun violence and sickness and all of the other things that I do, dealing with or being there for those in time of that type of need. That's not everybody's gifting, okay? It's not everybody's gifting. And at times it can be a burden. But care and concern for one another should be everyone's gifting. We can't go through life acting as if what happens to others is of no concern to us. That's not how this thing works. As a matter of fact, what happens to others directly affects us. And so I wanted to get on this evening and talk about something that's really been bothering me somewhat for a while, and I just haven't talked on it, but even more so now. And that something is the family of Walter Scott. Walter Scott and his family. Some of you might know that last week, Elder Walter Scott Sr., Walter Scott from the Michael Slager murder, his father passed away last week. And that was only months after Mother Judy Scott passed away this past January. Two of the finest, most upstanding, good-hearted, beautiful, wonderful, gracious people. The adjectives can go on and on that I've ever met or known in my life. And I don't think that either Rodney or Anthony is on right now. Walter Scott's brothers or his son, I don't believe he's on right now, because I didn't tell him I was going to do this, but I don't know, folks. I don't know. It's known that, when couples have been together a long time, married a long time, that sometimes it happens that one spouse will pass away, and within a measured amount of time, a second spouse will pass away. But my personal belief is in this is, and of course, it's all in God's timing, but I personally believe that their deaths were premature and were precipitated, hastened along by the death of their son, and the court cases and the length of time it took to get prosecutions and all of that. Walter Scott was Walter Scott was murdered on Saturday morning, April 4th, 2015, 5 years ago, approximately 9:35 in the morning on Saturday morning. I remember it very well. I didn't know Mrs. Judy Scott or Mr. Walter Scott Sr. at that time. I didn't know the rest of the family at that time. And out of that tragedy, I came to know and to love this entire family. And I think they in turn to me. I don't know intimately what they went through with the murder of their son. I can only imagine. I have a son. I can only imagine what they went through. With the video that circulated and circulated and recirculated and recirculated, and every time that video showed, they saw their son killed time and time and time again. And thank God for Faden Santana, who was placed on that scene that morning by God. Those that don't follow behind the Christian faith, now ain't the time. I ain't trying to feel it. I'm going to say what I got to say. He was placed there for the purpose of recording that video, recording what happened, and going and turning that video over to the community representatives. You see, I'm representing Moya right now, Mujahideen Daba. And I can do it because I respect Moye's memory, unlike others, and his legacy, unlike others. But Faden turned that video over to the community instead of to the police department, because we of the community believe had he turned that over to the police, we never would have seen that video. Never. 3 days after the murder, even though we knew about the video a day or two in advance, Faden got the video into the hands of the Scott family through Mujahideen de Baha. They in turn turned it over to their attorneys, Chris Stewart and Justin Bamberg, who released the video to the media, I believe it was, 3 days later, ultimately leading North Charleston Mayor Summey, who him and his department and the police department prior to that for 3 days were developing the scenario that Michael Slager gave them, that it was a self-defense shooting and Walter Scott had taken his taser from him, and Walter was the aggressor in all of this, when the reality was, and until we saw the video, we didn't find out till different. And once the video surfaced, Mayor Summey terminated Michael Slager's employment as a North Charleston police officer and turned him over to be arrested. And that's why I never give the mayor any credit for any of that. He did what he had to do. With the public outcry that was building at that time, had he not done what he did and terminated Slager's employment and had him arrested, I don't know what would have happened in North Charleston. It wouldn't have been pretty. But his arrest was on April the 7th of 2015. That case didn't get to trial until over a year later in 2016. Now just think all this time, while that video went around the world and everything, that Mother Judy Scott and her husband, Walter Sr., that family, the brothers, the sister-in-laws, Walter's son, had to endure that for all that time. And then when it went to court, they had to sit in court and watch this whole thing over and over and hear the testimony and hear people like Andy Savage, who was defending Michael Slager, talk crazy talk about how to get him off, with a video that clearly showed him shooting a man in his back. Fired 8 shots and 5 of them hit Walter Scott in his back over a broken tail light and a man running from him, a man that he knew the man's address and everything. They had to sit there in court all of that time, weeks on end, reliving not only just the video, but the testimony, over the coroner's testimony that actually shows the way the bullets entered into the body and exited the body, and everything, the graphics of it all. This mother repeatedly watched her son being slaughtered, this father murdered by this law enforcement officer. As I said, Andy Savage was the defense attorney, and Ninth Circuit Solicitor Scarlett Wilson was the lead prosecuting attorney. In December of 2016, after weeks of testimony, as the community waited on a guilty verdict, guilty of murder, the jury came back as a hung jury, and Michael Slager was not convicted. After all that time, after all that grief that family had to go through. Thank God for Mr. and Mrs. Scott's faith that took them to, all I can remember is Mrs. Scott in different locations giving that closing remark, No matter what this, it ain't over till God says it's over. Believing that even after the hung jury, it ain't over till God says it's over. But that day, her and her husband, Walter Scott's brothers, their family members, Walter Scott's son, they had to go back home with no justice after all, from April 4th until the middle of December. No justice whatsoever. Just go home. Thank you, Scarlett Wilson. Thank you for what you did not do. And it's shown that through recent revelation, that in her opening remarks, she literally gave the case to the defense, to Andy Savage. She painted Walter Scott not as the victim of this vigilante cop, but as the perpetrator, the aggressor. She said Walter Scott, he shouldn't have ran. It was what Walter Scott did that got him killed. This was the prosecutor, the solicitor. Her job was to take Walter Slager down, not put the blame on Walter Scott. The video showed Walter Scott was not at fault. So why did she open up her arguments in that way? Ultimately leading in that case to a hung jury. Michael Slager, free man. Thank God for the federal government that picked up that case. Only a civil rights case, not a murder case. And a conviction came in federal court. Michael Slager was convicted in the federal court of violating Walter Scott's rights and sentenced to 20 years and a little bit more. Not for murder. Not for murder, but for violation of civil rights. Scarlett Wilson's job was to get this conviction on him for murder, and she did not do her job. Not only that, the federal case, it ended 1 year later. So we're talking about from the time that Walter Scott was murdered, April 4th, 2015, until December 2017, that's when the Scott family finally got some kind of semblance of justice. But in between that time, they had to watch the video over and over and hear testimony over and over. And what should have been settled with a guilty verdict in the first trial under the Ninth Circuit Solicitor's Office had to go into a federal case, and they had to redo it all. And a year after that case started, they finally got a conviction. Folks, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. And I will share, I really do believe, because I've heard both Rodney and Anthony speak, which they hadn't done for years, this year, that I do believe that they feel as I do, that this failure to bring justice for their son and the long drawn out case that they had to go through because of a flawed justice system and a solicitor who handed a case to the defendant instead of doing her job, I believe that took a serious toll on both Mrs. Judy Scott and Elder Walter Scott Sr. I believe that it affected their health to the point that both of them passed on long before they might have, had they gotten justice originally. Now, you can say I'm wrong in this, and I'm good with that. You believe what you want to. But I couldn't sit on this thing no more. I had to tell folks about this, and it don't have nothing to do with this election. It has everything to do with in January 29th, Mother Judy Scott passed away, and 8 months later, her husband, Walter Sr., passed away. It's crazy. It has everything to do with that. Had Mr. Scott not passed last week, I probably wouldn't have this live right now. But as I look at TV and I see these commercials with Scarlett Wilson on them and praising herself and patting herself on the back about she's all, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But folks, that ain't right. I don't know if you all know it, but myself and other members of the community, after the charges were brought against Michael Slager under the Ninth Circuit Solicitor's Office, we asked her to step away from the case. We did not want her to handle the case because we weren't confident in her. We didn't believe that she could bring in a conviction in the case of Walter Scott, even with the video. Myself, a name that I don't use much, Elder James Johnson, and others in the community, Merrill Chapman, Mujahideen Dabaha, Shamiki Gray, we stood out in front of her office. Willette Wilkins, we stood out in front of her office and protested. Laurie, Dimitri, protested to tell her to back out. Don't do this. We don't trust you. We don't believe you can bring in a conviction. For days we stood out there. And she refused to recuse herself from the case. And ultimately, what we spoke on became prophetic. Because in December 2016, she did not close the case. She did exactly what we thought. And what was that based on? We wasn't just out there talking. No, this was based on some fact, okay? She was the solicitor in 2013 when there was another black male shot in the back by law enforcement out on James Island. Dale Drayton shot out in the back, running away from police. Once again, just as with the Scott family, there was a settlement, a financial settlement. There was a financial settlement in that one. But the two police officers involved went free. They went free, people. So when we looked at that and we looked at here, she's going to prosecute this case with Walter. It's like, no, you need to walk away. Let's get somebody else in here that we can have confidence will close this case. But she refused to. And because of that, we didn't get any kind of justice in the criminal case. For what? Had it not been for the civil case in federal court, well, Michael Slager would probably be on somebody law enforcement, probably for North Charleston right now. It's crazy. And, like I said, had Mr. Scott not passed last week and Mother Judy Scott, man, what beautiful people. I wish you all had a chance to meet them. My life has been so blessed. Unfortunately, it was in the aftermath of tragedy. And I've met so many wonderful people in the aftermath of tragedy. And I just hope that I've been able to be a comfort to them in some kind of way. But they were just beautiful people. Beautiful people. The family. The brothers, the daughter-in-laws. They're just beautiful people. Walter's son, beautiful people. Not deserving of any of this. And I guess that's why I had this burden on my heart to say something about it, because every time I'm watching TV for 4 and 5 times a day, at least I see Scarlett Wilson, who is running for re-election, a commercial on her. She's got one commercial that starts out by saying Scarlett Wilson brings real experience from prosecuting a crooked sheriff to rapists and murderers. But she couldn't get a conviction in 2 officer-involved shootings. It goes on to say Scarlett brings more than 20 years as a prosecutor for the U.S. Attorney's Office and as a state criminal prosecutor. This is trying to paint the picture that, she got all this experience. But that experience didn't do a darn thing with Daryl Drayton in 2013 and Walter Scott in 2015. Nothing. All that experience led her to do her opening remarks in 2016 in the Walter Scott case and give the defense their case. It goes on to say that Scarlett Wilson brings real leadership, managing more than 150 employees and an annual budget of $11 million. And then she speaks. She says, I've worked hard shutting the revolving door for criminals getting out of jail and committing additional crimes. You ask anybody in Charleston County, any black folk in Charleston County, if that's the truth, that either been in the system or came out of the system. There's a few people because of her program, restorative justice program, that is, it's a new program. It's not exactly old, and she's been in her office, I believe, like 13 years. So this is something new. But she says she's worked hard shutting the revolving door for criminals and getting out of jail and committing additional crimes. The recidivism rate in Charleston County and Berkeley County, it ain't no different than the recidivism rate across our nation. It's extremely high. And then she goes on to close that commercial out by saying, I'm Scarlett Wilson, and working together, we're making our community safer. She didn't make it safer for Walter Scott. She didn't make it safer for Daryl Drayton. And the last time I looked, crime is soaring in this area. Safer. She didn't make it safe enough for Mrs. Judy Scott and Elder Walter Scott Sr. to live a longer life by closing the deal in a court case that was given to her through a video. And let me make this perfectly clear, that the brothers, not the family, they're just some nice people, and I know that they probably won't say what I'm saying, and that's why I'm saying it. Okay, they didn't ask me to say this or nothing, but I just feel it's necessary to say this. That's some hogwash, because I can't use stronger terminology. Scarlett Wilson. And I've been friends with Scarlett Wilson. But this presentation in this darn election has showed me just how much, just how deep this thing is, really. She knows she's young. Y'all know the first campaign commercial that I saw with her, I don't know, you all might have seen it. It's a commercial with her standing up, right? Or not her, she's off to the side. It's actually a commercial that shows Chris Stewart, who was the Scott family attorney, with Mrs. Scott and Mr. Scott standing behind him, and Anthony Scott in the rear too. And the words that they cropped in there, okay, the little part of the press conference is speaking somewhat in a positive light of the solicitor, Scarlett Wilson. Folks, let me tell you all this, okay? Because when I saw it, I had to start asking. And I called attorney Chris Stewart. I said, do you know about this? He said, no, I don't know nothing about that. Of course, because it's public domain, you can't do anything about her using it. But still in all, common decency would have said, I'm going to use these images of the family, of the attorney and the family of Walter Scott. Let me let them know I'm going to use it, or ask them if it's okay. So I didn't just call Chris Stewart. I contacted both Rodney and Anthony Scott, Walter Scott's brothers. and asked them, did y'all know anything about this? Guess what they answered? Guess what the answer was? We didn't know anything about that. She tossed up this ad for her campaign that makes it look like the Scott family and Chris Stewart are endorsing her. That's what it looks like when you look at it. And they ain't know nothing about it. And they didn't even call and ask, can we use it? Can we use the picture? Even though they didn't have to. Legally, they didn't have to. But just by doing what's right. Now, when we talk about our solicitor's office and when we talk about our elected officials, I talked about it yesterday. There comes a time when we should be able to expect that if it's a call to either do what's right or to do what's wrong, our elected officials will do what's right, not what's wrong. And if I was either Rodney or Anthony, Tony, I'd be angry about it. I don't know about them. I didn't get that deep with them on the conversation. And if I did, I wouldn't tell y'all right now because they are kind of private about themselves. But that ticked me off. Straight up. So when we're talking about Scarlett Wilson, and anybody asks me why I'm not backing her, why I can't back her in this election, I just laid it out. As far as I'm concerned, for me and my people that look like me, she don't mean us no good. And I'd rather take a gamble on somebody who doesn't have 150 employees and an annual budget of $11 million, which, of course, she didn't have that before she got elected to office. I'd rather take a gamble on the other person than to let this lady get back in that seat. Never been challenged in that race before. And now it's time to remove, repeal, and replace her. Now it's time for it to be over. Mother Judy Scott said it consistently. It ain't over till God says it's over. And I'm really hoping that God said it's over for Charleston County and Berkeley County and the reign that Scarlett Wilson has had as the Ninth Circuit solicitor. It didn't have to be that way. It didn't have to be that way. And I will continue to stress that it is my personal belief that both Mother Judy Scott and her beloved husband, Elder Walter Scott Sr., would still be with us today had Scarlett Wilson done her darn job. Just that simple. That's it for me for tonight, folks. I'm sorry, no laughing and no joking, no music and all of that. Like I said, I had something on my heart I had to get off. Maybe I can move on now to, tomorrow and the next day in my personal family, I've got another birthday celebration coming up and an anniversary coming up. So, folks, April 4th, 2015, 9:35 in the morning, a Saturday, the anniversary of Dr. King's assassination, anniversary of the death of my grandmother, who died on the same day that Martin Luther King was assassinated. But that night before, the Scott family were jovial and loving up on each other and might have exchanged pleasantries and have a good time. And I'll see you later. They were actually scheduled, I think, to be doing some cooking out, some barbecuing later that Saturday. But that never happened. And from that point on, 9:30 a.m., April 4th, 2015, from that point on, for every holiday and every birthday, there's always been an empty seat at their house because of Michael Slager, a North Charleston police officer who decided to be judge, jury, and executioner right on the street and lie about it. And when they went to court, Scarlett Wilson couldn't bring it home, even with the video. I don't know. So I say that about the night before and the dashed hopes and dreams that were shattered that morning 5 years ago. Don't take time with your loved ones for granted. No matter who they are, no matter how young or how old they are, don't take it for granted. There's no minute or a second that's promised to any one of us. Don't take it for granted. Tell your loved ones that you love them. Tell those who you don't get along with that you love them. Break the cycle of hate. Maybe if Michael Slager would have had more people that spoke life into his life, he never would have taken a life on April 4th. And subsequently, and I'm going to say with the complicit actions of the Ninth Circuit Solicitor's Office, taking the lives of Mother Judy Scott and Elder Walter Scott Sr. Tell somebody you love them. Hug your babies. Don't take tomorrow for granted. And know that I love you. Know this. Know that when you hurt, I hurt. And know that until we see justice run down like rivers of water and righteousness like a mighty stream, I'm going to continue to fight the good fight of faith and speak truth to power, because I ain't scared of none of them. None of them. Mr. and Mrs. Scott, Mother Judy Scott, and it was always a blessing to see her, and Mr. Scott. Man, I'll always love y'all, and I'll always remember y'all. I'll always remember how much you supported me in everything that I do, everything I've done. And that's why I speak about your life right now and how I truly believe that you should have still been with us. God bless you all. God bless you all. Y'all have a wonderful evening. And it's my usual sign off. I love you, and ain't absolutely nothing you can do about that. I love you. Y'all take care. Peace.